All right, and we're live. Hey everyone, welcome to this week's Stripe Developer Offers Hours. My name is Cecil Philip, and I am a... What is that? Okay, that was a little strange. All right, sorry about that, folks. There's a little bit of an echo there going on. Again, my name is Cecil Philip. Welcome to Stripe Developer Office Hours. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be talking about some of our components that we have. So Stripe elements, checkout sessions, and some of those other really cool things. But before we do that, I want to go ahead and introduce some of the folks that are in our, some of our guests today. And today we have some of the folks from the checkout team. And so let's start with Jake. Jake, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and let folks know a little bit about who you are and what do you do?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Jake. I'm a product manager at Stripe, based in New York. Been at Stripe for a little over 7 years now, and I work mainly on elements and the elements with checkout session integration.
Awesome. And Mike, let's move over to you. You want to tell folks who you are and what you do?
Yeah. Hello, everybody. I'm Michael, also a product manager here at Stripe. I'm based in San Francisco. I work closely with Jake, but mainly on the API side of things, so like the checkout sessions API.
Nice. Awesome. And then we have Jonathan. Jonathan, you've been here before, man. People should know you a little bit, right?
Hopefully people remember me. Yeah, but I'm Jonathan. I've been at Stripe for about 4 years now, and I work on our technical solutions team. We kind of help everybody build with Stripe, making sure their integrations are running as they need.
Awesome. Well, thank all of you for being here today. Like, definitely looking forward to the conversation we're about to have. But before we do that, we're going to jump into a quick round of updates just to let folks know about some of the cool things that are happening, in and around the Stripe ecosystem. Now, for folks that may or may not know, we actually launched a developer blog late last year. Our blog is stripe.dev. And over in stripe.dev, we're constantly releasing different articles and, sharing different updates and things of that nature about some of the things that are happening in Stripe. So in this particular blog post that I wanted to highlight for you all today, I think this one came out a couple of weeks ago, November 21st. And this one's talking about securing Stripe API keys in AWS with automatic rotation. And I know for folks, being able to secure your API keys, update them, and keep them, safe within your infrastructure is always an important thing for us to do. So I definitely recommend you head over to the blog post and take a look and see, how you can do that specifically with some of the infrastructure that's available in AWS. I think this one in particular talks about the AWS Secret Manager. But I'm sure if you kind of read through it, you'll notice a lot of the patterns and the conversation that happens in here is actually pretty cloud agnostic, outside of specifically using those tools in AWS. So if you have, tools in GCP or in Azure, there are probably things that will probably relate to that as well. So again, definitely make sure you go ahead and check this out. This is over on stripe.dev, and this one's talking about API key rotation using AWS infrastructure. Now, the next thing I want to highlight, and this one was pretty big for us a couple of weeks ago as well. So the Stripe, our developer AI team, recently put out an MCP server. So if folks aren't familiar with MCP is, it stands for Model Context Protocol. And it's essentially a way that will allow you to add tools in a very, I guess, an LLM or a platform agnostic way to like some of your agentic workflows. And so with our MCP server now, you can add, Stripe functionality to your applications. So, you can have your LLM use the Stripe API as a tool to, do whatever it is that you're trying to do. And it's actually even open source. So if you head over to github.com/stripe/agent toolkit, it is inside of that repository, written in JavaScript, written in Node. So if folks are, interested in seeing how that implementation was created, if they are interested in contributing or submitting issues or anything of the sort, definitely go ahead and head over there and you could check that out. Next thing I want to highlight too, over on our Stripe developer YouTube channel, I know some of you folks are watching us in YouTube, other folks happen to be in LinkedIn at the moment. We released a new video. We release videos pretty often, to be honest with you, but we have a new video out talking about auto-scaling your Stripe event processing with Kubernetes. And this one talks about, managing your events with event destinations, using the Kata project for auto-scaling based on, things like message queues or, HTTP traffic. So again, if you're building Stripe integrations with Kubernetes, this is definitely something that I recommend that you take a look at. And last thing that I want to highlight super quick before we get into the meat of our conversation today. Our DevRel team, Stripe DevRel team, is going to be in London. Specifically, we're going to be in London on March 11th. So if any of you folks are watching happen to be in London, definitely make sure you go ahead and check out our meetup page. We're going to have folks from inside of Stripe, folks from outside of Stripe. There'll be food and drinks, and be giving away swag and all this fun stuff inside of the Stripe office in London. So again, if you're around, definitely feel free to come by and check that out. Now that's done. That's all for our updates today. So I'm going to switch over to Jake. So Jake, why don't you give me a little bit of an update or a little bit of an understanding of what do we come here to talk about today?
Yeah, thanks. All right, so today we're talking about a new integration path that we are weeks away from launching to GA. It is currently in a public preview state, and we've seen really great feedback and adoption, but want to just talk about it with this group and share a bit more about it. So I guess before we jump in, let's do a quick refresher on some of Stripe's payment UIs and APIs. So while Stripe has some other UIs like hosted invoice page and customer portal and payment links that are really great for specific use cases, we got to think about three main payment UIs that Stripe offers. The first one is a hosted checkout page, where folks are redirected to a Stripe hosted payment page, fully optimized, the result of hundreds of experiments, but it is a redirect to a Stripe hosted page, and there are custom domains offered, but Stripe kind of owns the whole page there for you. We also have an embedded version of that where you can embed this entire checkout experience on your own site. And again, fully optimized, a little less control because it's kind of this all-in-one package. And then all the way to the right here, we have elements, which are these embeddable components. And we have a suite of elements that you can use to build out your checkout page. Elements have been around for a while, so is checkout. What we're going to talk about today is how Elements now works with the Checkout Sessions API, which is a new integration path for us. So moving forward, historically, these UIs have been tied to a single API. So the hosted and embedded checkout pages worked with the Checkout Sessions API, and the Elements worked with the Payment Intents API. Today, we are working on bridging that gap. So now Elements can work with both the Checkout Sessions API as well as the Payment Intents API. If you're unfamiliar with the two different APIs, I think this graphic is a helpful indicator. The Checkout Sessions API really allows you to model the entire checkout journey for your customer. So maybe you're collecting some, contact information. Maybe you're doing shipping. You might have tax calculations. You might be offering discount and coupon codes. You might be localizing the checkout experience for different currencies or payment methods. The Checkout Session API will handle all of that in addition to payments. The Payment Intents is a lower level API that really is just about payments. It's you telling Stripe, just charge this payment method this amount of money. That's all I want, and we'll take care of orchestrating the rest of our checkout page. Makes total sense. Absolutely a use case for that. But because the Checkout Sessions API is built on the concept of line items, it becomes a lot easier for Stripe to help you attach other products. So if you're doing, subscription billing, if you're trying to calculate tax rates, if you're trying to do, currency conversion, discounts, these are all things that are built in natively to the Checkout Session API and are much simpler to integrate. You could do it with the Payment Intents API, but you'd then have to go integrate the subscriptions API or the Stripe tax API and build out a lot more of that logic and manage the state yourself. Again, things that you can do, but the Checkout Session API is us taking some of that off of your plate and managing it for you. So if we move along and just take a look at how these integration options have presented themselves across Stripe over time, this was the current state of things. And so you can see in the top left, we've got payment links and pricing table and buy button. Super easy to get started, fast to get started, but don't offer a ton of control or customization. And then we move down towards the middle and you've got Stripe hosted page and embedded checkout. And these offer you slightly more control. There's some branding settings you can play around with. But again, not a ton of control, although again, very fast to get up and running. And then we've got this big gap in the middle before we get down into our payment element and payment intents integrations. You can see all the way in the bottom right corner, we've got the raw pan, raw API only integrations. A lot of work, very difficult to maintain, PCI compliance. And then we've got those payment element integrations, and we've got both our intent first and deferred integrations. You can see card element is a legacy element that we do offer, but are very much moving away from it over time. And so we had this really big gap in the middle. And what we wanted to do is try to close that gap and find that right blend of ease and speed with control and customization. And so one of the things we're doing is what we're calling bring your own logic. And this is going to be rolling out in a few different steps over the course of the year, but allowing users to do more updating of the line items, for example, throughout the course of the checkout session. More to come on that in future sessions. But the other thing is we've brought up this Elements with Checkout Session API integration, which really helps close that gap. It's, the checkout session makes the integration a lot easier and simpler, but you're getting the real customization and control over your front end with Elements. And so we're going to talk about that today. And then just to kind of summarize where we're at in this future world, we've got our Elements integrations with this purple box here. You can do it with both the checkout session API or the deferred intents approach. And then we've also got all of these UIs that work with the checkout session API.
So Jake, I'm kind of curious as you're showing some of this stuff. When you talk to customers, do you see any particular like usage patterns as folks are like, hey, I like to use the payment intents API for these use cases, but I like to use checkout sessions for these use cases. Do you see any big differences with those?
The big thing we see is checkout session API is really great for on-session transactions. And what we mean by that is where the customer is directly interacting with a checkout page. Maybe they're not checking out, maybe they're saving their payment details, but they are, very much like interacting with the user at the time of the transaction. The payment intents is definitely the better approach for off-session payments. And what we mean by that is billing hotel incidentals after the fact. You're not interacting with the hotel's checkout page. Then they're just kind of saying, Stripe, this person did $100 at the mini bar, we got to charge them for it. And so that's the recommended approach for that. The other thing we'll say is for users getting started or really thinking about their checkout page, the checkout session API is great. It helps you orchestrate all of this up front, get started really easily. You don't have to build your own kind of state machine for checkout. If you've already got a checkout, integration somewhere else, or you're on payment intents, and you've already built that state machine, you're probably okay for now. Although again, the checkout session API does make it a lot easier to take advantage of some of these other Stripe products. So if you're thinking about using billing, tax, adaptive pricing, discounts and coupons, these are all things that are far, far easier to do with the checkout API.
Gotcha. Another question I had was, so as I'm looking at these two different ways of interacting with the Stripe API, how does this relate to payment methods, right? Like, do I have more or less control with working with payment methods? Like, do I have to consider anything as I'm choosing between these different APIs of how I plug in payment methods into my user experience?
Nope. Both the payment intents and checkout sessions API work with all payment methods, with the exception of BLIC and ACSS. But other than that, all the payment methods work with the checkout sessions API. We offer all those payment methods with dynamic payment method sorting right in the API.
Okay, fantastic. Great. All right, let's keep going.
Awesome. I think that's, so just a quick recap of kind of where we're at today with some integration options. With the checkout UI, you've got your hosted and your embedded version of it. And you can see, lower customization, but really fast to get up and running. Then we move over to the Elements UI. You can choose between the payment intents API or the checkout session API. You can see that's the new one we're talking about today. Much higher degree of UI customization on the front end. the checkout session is easier to integrate with and faster to integrate with than the Payment Intents API. But again, this is all slightly more work than if you were to just use the pre-built hosted or embedded checkout pages.
And one thing I just noticed or I realized is that we actually have never spoken, and we as in like on this show have never really spoken about embedded checkout yet. And so really quick, could you tell folks a little bit about what's the main difference between hosted and embedded, and like why do we have these two options available?
Yes, let me go back here. Embedded came directly from user feedback. So we had built the Stripe hosted checkout page on the left here, and you can see that's the whole page. It's a redirect, and users loved that there was this fast and easy out of the box way to get started with Stripe. Super low code, but they didn't love the redirect, and they didn't love taking their customers off their page in some cases. And so that's why we built the embedded version. And it is really this, we took the hosted checkout page and we made it this embeddable iframe that you can just drop right into your page and kind of create that seamless experience for your customers, but with the same easy out of the box optimized checkout page.
Right, and I love that, right? Because for me, like when I use hosted checkout, I'm just thinking, I don't want to build this form. I don't want to design this form. I kind of just want to give folks a place to go to give me their details, and then I can let Stripe do what Stripe do the Stripe thing kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so now essentially what you're saying is like the embedded version is like the middle. Like I still don't have to design the form,
yes.
Right? And I still get the localization. I get link. I get discounts and coupon codes and like all of those other things that like we just kind of get out of the box from checkout. But I still don't have to design the form, but I also don't have to sacrifice my user experience because you're still on my page, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, awesome. So then, as a developer, then how would I like how do you see folks choosing between embedded checkout and elements? Because I think for both of those, right, you get the option of like staying on your page. Like I am not sending you anywhere else. You're still here with me, right? But like, how do you see folks choosing between those? Because I can imagine with elements, you still get a little bit more control in terms of like the look and feel and the aesthetics of your application. Whereas with the embedded checkout one, again, like I don't have to deal with the form, but I have to deal with the form, right? Like I kind of have to like mold it into like what the rest of my application looks like.
Yep. We see a lot of times users, startups in particular, will start out with hosted or embedded checkout, and as their product suite grows, as their products become more complex, as they become more opinionated or more resourced and want to have a bit more control over their page, they might look at elements as that graduation step. Some users certainly stay on checkout and scale and are quite large. But if you want to offer steps of like in-store pickup versus shipping, or there's some additional customizations that you want, or you just have like a very particular, brand and design philosophy that you can't quite achieve with checkout, elements is a good option for you.
Okay. And then I'm assuming that both checkout and embedded checkout are available in all the countries that Stripe supports.
Yes.
Right?
And elements. Yeah.
Awesome. Fantastic. Great. Thank you. Well, no more questions for me for now. And we don't have any questions yet popping up in the chat. We do have Ricardo. Ricardo's making a quick comment about, I think we were talking about like on and off session a little while ago. Sounds like he had like some similar experiences with that as well. All right, cool. Well, let's keep it going. I think Michael, you're going to be next, right? I think Michael's going to be showing us a quick demo.
Yep.
All right, cool. Well, Jake, I'm going to take your screen off real quick, and yeah, Michael, when you're ready, I can put your screen on, and we could switch over to you.
Yep, I'm ready. Hopefully this goes well. I feel like live demos sometimes fail spectacularly, but let's pray for this live demo. Okay, so
I'll tell you what. I made a sacrifice for you. I sacrificed some code for you earlier today to make sure that the demo gods are going to be happy. So I hope we're going to be good.
Love it. Cool. So kind of like what Jake mentioned, right now I have a embedded checkout, right? So on this right side of the screen, let's assume my business is scaling. I want to kind of customize and create maybe my own custom checkout. I've outgrown Stripe's embedded checkout. And so maybe, my designer kind of mocked up something like this, like a custom checkout for my crazy products. And you can see, we still have all of the same payment methods that the embedded checkout also has, like Cash App and Klarna, right? And basically through the live demo, I'll show you how to basically achieve this custom checkout, starting with the embedded checkout. So let's go back here, let's actually go to our Stripe docs. So the page that you want to go to is build a checkout page with embedded components. Happy to share this link kind of later. I think I might have shared it with you, Cecil, so feel free to, put that up. So first thing is first, you have to install kind of like this beta version. As Jake mentioned, we will go live in public in GA in a few weeks. So in a few weeks time, you won't need to do this. The other thing to keep in mind is, again, because we are in beta, you do need to add a specific beta API version. So I'll do that right here. Please don't steal my test key and create crazy products. Moving on to the second step, this is by far the hardest step, where all you got to do is change this UI mode to custom. And that's all you got to do. It's literally just a few characters of change. So you can see right here, right now, my UI mode is embedded. All I have to do is type in custom. And now I will be able to create a custom checkout with this checkout sessions API. So that's super easy on the back end. The front end gets a little bit tougher, but that's because obviously we can customize it to whatever we want to. So again, on the front end now, you should install kind of this like beta package that we have. Very similar to the back end, we have something called beta headers. So I will add that in right here when we load in Stripe. So that's pretty important, basically saying, hey, I'm opting into this, this beta on the front end. So then this is where things get interesting. So on your front end still, right? Right now I have the embedded checkout provider. And what we actually want to do is we want to switch that to the checkout provider. So the checkout provider basically allows you to kind of wrap everything so that you have access to the checkout session details. So things like the total of the checkout session, maybe even the line items. And I'll show you in a bit kind of how to access some of those. But essentially what we want to do is replace embedded checkout provider with just what I call the regular checkout provider. And then there is a embedded checkout component. What we want to do is we want to swap that out with whatever our own component is. So I pre-created one called checkout form. And this is, again, checkout form is my own custom UI component that I've created. And I'll walk through that in just a second. We give a sample of like how to create a very, very basic checkout form, but I've kind of gone ahead and created a very not basic one. So I'll save that real quick. And so I'll kind of walk you through this checkout form that I've created. I think first thing is very similar to the tutorial. I collect the customer email. So I create an email input section, right? This allows you to obviously collect an email, and then you can set that on the checkout. So once you collect the email, you can do a callback, checkout.update email, and that basically sets the email of the customer to this specific checkout session. Super simple, nothing too crazy. Next step, I think, is by far the most important step, is collecting payment details. Obviously, that's what Stripe is really good for, collecting payments and charging $52 to a card. This is super simple with payment elements also, like what Jake mentioned. So now we are using, again, this payment element. So it's not the full embedded checkout. This is just a very, very specific element to collect payment details like card or Klarna or Cash App or whatever. So what I do here, very, very simple. I just have a payment element component that I drop in. Super simple. You can customize with different fields, with different layouts. You can even order the payment methods however you want to order them. You can even have users accept a terms of service, things like that. but super customizable, like what Jake mentioned. We also have ways to customize the appearance. This is used by some of our obviously biggest power users, but you can change a lot of the look and the feel to get that brand right. Cool. And then last but not least, submitting the payment. This is obviously also super important. This is where you go and charge the card. So I've created a pay button. And what the pay button does is when you click on it, it calls this confirm method. Whoops. And so what this confirm, I hate VS Code. What this confirm method does is it basically calls, hey, go charge this card, or go charge this Cash App, or go charge this Klarna payment method, whatever the amount was. So if it was $20 or $30, this confirm is kind of where you handle all of that. And then you can kind of get a result, and then you can obviously do whatever you need with that result. And then last but not least is obviously testing your integration. So let me just save a bunch of this stuff. And then if we go back here, why did it not load? Looks like, oh, I know why, because I need to restart the backend server. So let me restart the backend server, because again, we changed kind of this UI mode from embedded to custom, and now let me refresh. And so there we go, Michael's test custom checkout. Let me actually center it a little bit. I created a new CSS element, and so there we go. So now it's centered. So now, again, I took the embedded and I recreated this custom checkout that, let's assume, our designer created. I'll pause there. Any questions or comments from the audience?
Yeah, we had a couple of questions from LinkedIn that are not showing up in our queue for some reason. But first thing I would ask you, so you're showing this with React, and I know we have our Stripe React JS SDK that we have. Do we support any other front-end frameworks for this?
We don't, so like, as in like Next.js or anything like that. We don't.
Next.js or Angular or anything of the sort.
Yeah, so obviously Next.js, I think, can use React components. I believe a lot of our components cannot be rendered server side, but Angular, I don't believe we have any like specific components for that, but we do have what I like to call like kind of raw JavaScript methods on the front end, so you can access a lot of these things, right? So maybe very concretely, something I forgot to show is you can actually access the currency, the total, the tax amounts, any other currency options that your product might have. You can kind of all access this from like React hooks that we have. You can also access this via like the raw JavaScript SDK, right? And this is nice because, again, assuming you use Stripe tax, it's kind of hard to calculate within your own code what the tax amount is. And so what you can do is you can read the tax amounts, you can read the order total and the currency all from the checkout session. And we'll kind of handle all of those, all that math, all that complicated math for you.
Right. Okay. And this library, just like the rest of our SDKs, it is open source and it's available on GitHub right now. Is that correct?
Yes, this should be in the Stripe.js package.
Okay. And the reason I wanted to bring that up is because, so we do have this React.js support, but if folks are interested in contributing another library or another extension or anything of the sort, like they can always head over and say, hey, I'm interested in creating one for Vue or for Svelte or for Angular or whatever the case is. And then, I'm sure the team will be more than willing to like kind of help guide you through that process and kind of extend the capabilities of the thing that you're trying to build.
Just to come back to the Next.js point, yeah, like as Michael said, everything is obviously we have rack components for all the elements components, so the whole front end aspect works fine. They can't be server rendered, but if you look at our documentation, all the quick starts that we have, the checkout quick starts, the payment element quick start, they all use Next.js as app router now. So everything is rendered on the client in terms of the UI, and then you have the actual kind of server side primitives in Next.js where you can kind of do you can have route handlers or server actions to actually create the API objects and make the API requests that you need to. So yeah, all of this should work in Next.js, and I'm sure we'll have when we GA, I'm sure we'll have an official Next.js quick start.
Awesome. And then I noticed too on the back end, you did have to make a quick change when you created that checkout session, right? And you had to change it to custom.
Yep.
Are there any other backend changes that we need to consider? Like, are there different events that are going to get fired, or is there anything else from a backend perspective that developers should know about?
Yeah, it's a good question. From a webhook events perspective, it should be all the same. So if you had embedded checkout or hosted checkout and you kind of handled a lot of those webhook events, should be pretty much exactly the same if you were to move on to a custom checkout powered by checkout sessions. And so that's also the beauty of this checkout sessions API. It's a lot of your backend code will pretty much stay the same.
Gotcha. And so for the return URL, right? So I noticed we have a return URL, but we don't have to do the redirect, right? Which again, I think is like the main thing, right? So we still provide the return URL, and I'm guessing we can still also provide I think it's the cancel URL as well. Like all of those options are still valid. Just that when you return that session to the user, typically what would happen for folks that have not used, checkout before, typically what would happen was that there would be a return URL. You have to do the redirects back and forth. So we don't have to do that, but the rest of it is the same. And we just have to specify that UI mode to be custom. And then, we're pretty much just good to go.
Yep. And very, very specifically, something that you can do in the confirm button. So if you don't care about a redirect, I believe there's like a redirect, like if required. Yep. So redirect if required. So there are some payment methods that require a redirect.
Sure.
But if, for example, a credit card without any 3DS, if you don't want to redirect, totally fine. And you can say redirect only if required for this specific payment method.
Yeah. Gotcha. Awesome. And then again, and like we said before, right? Like we have full control over the look and feel, right? So I know, I really appreciate your amazing design skills, not trying to knock you at all on it, but I mean, if we wanted to, again, like we could, either in the dashboard, or I think we have the appearance API, we could use that to style the look and feel of these components, make it look like it's really a part of, your application. And then you'll be able to, make use of some of these features that you're showing right now.
Yep, exactly. You can kind of customize the look and feel. I mean, I guess if it's okay, if we still have some time, I would love to show off like one of my favorite custom checkouts.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, so there's a company called Brilliant. They're basically kind of a e-learning platform. They also use Elements with checkout sessions. So when you go premium, so they use Stripe payment elements, and they also use checkout sessions API. And obviously, as you can tell, they create a very custom checkout page, right? This is something that, Stripe's hosted and embedded checkout isn't going to support easily right out of the box. They have a lot of value props, things like that. You can view more details, yada, yada, yada. And I think this is a great example of a very customized, obviously, with better design skills than me, of a like very custom, a very bespoke checkout page that still utilizes Stripe's payment element.
One of the things I like about this experience particularly, and you didn't really mention it, but this is not a demo site. This is a real site that folks are on right now. And it already has like, the last 4 digits of your credit card already there, right? Which for me just kind of signals, once your integration is done well, your customers will have such a quick time to conversion, right? Like I don't have to, do a lot of typing, and I got to put in my address, or I got to go in my password manager and I got to do the thing. Like the website kind of just knows, okay, well, you're a Stripe customer, and we can plug in things like Link, like Apple Pay, like Google Pay or GPay or whatever the case this is. And, it just makes your checkout experience that much more seamless, which for you as a as a business person, you definitely want your customers to not really have to think too much about like pressing the pay button.
Yep, exactly.
Awesome. Do you have any other customers that are using this embedded checkout stuff that you want to mention?
I mean, we have some really cool companies that I don't know if I'm allowed to share just yet, but once they go
we'll
live,
keep it quiet. We'll keep it quiet.
Imagine the big companies of the world that you maybe hear about on the news are actively integrating with this Elements with Checkout Sessions product. And I don't know if it's my place to share with the world just yet.
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. I always love like a little bit of teasers when we do these sessions. You know, folks are like, oh, I want to know, like, I want to see what's going to happen next, kind of thing.
Yeah, but it's definitely like there's a few companies that I'm confident everyone in the chat has heard of in the news.
That's fantastic. All right, and so you mentioned earlier up when we first started that like this is in beta now, right? Like the SDK anyway is in beta now. Any thoughts on when folks might want to be able to like use it from production app, or is it even though it's beta, can we use it in production apps now and then just kind of give you feedback? Like, how are you feeling about the quality of this like beta release?
Yeah, good question. So it's very production ready. We've had it tested by a lot of our big merchants live in production. Like obviously, Brilliant.org is a merchant that has this live in production, and so it's very much battle tested. We just have like a few things to like iron out. For example, like updating our docs. So that it's like more clear, like kind of Jonathan mentioned, with like other languages, other packages, other frameworks, and so in terms of being battle tested, very much battle tested.
Okay.
We're just obviously adding a few more features as we go, but I would very highly recommend everyone go test it out if it makes sense for your use case today, and go live. Once we do GA, it's just removing kind of these beta headers that I mentioned, right? So kind of going back to here, once we go live, you can kind of remove these beta headers. But that's pretty much the only minor code change you'll need once we kind of put this out in the public at the end of March.
Yeah, I would just stress that there's no gate or anything. This is like, public preview. Users can go use this, and the bar for a public preview to ungate something in Stripe is incredibly high. And so we've gone through extensive reviews and evaluations. Really, it's more like those semantic polish pieces that we're still ironing out.
Yep.
Okay, fantastic. And so in this particular code snippet you're showing right now, like this is the backend code that you're showing, and so all of our backend SDKs. So if I think about Go, I think about Ruby, I think about Python, I think about .NET. Like they all have, today are currently updated to be able to return like the right shape of checkout sessions. I'm assuming that'll support the front end pieces. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly all the languages we support out of the box, but like yes, Python. Like we have customers who use Python. Obviously, this works out of the box with Python. I believe like a few months ago, we had someone ask us about Go, and we support Go. And so a lot of those backend languages we do support kind of out of the box with this integration.
Okay, awesome. All right, and so if folks wanted to try this out today, I know you showed us the quick start in the docs, right? Yep. But again, I'm guessing this is, like we mentioned before, this is also on GitHub in our GitHub org. Folks can go ahead and do that. If folks wanted to reach out to you, talk to you, ask you questions, like how do you want people to send you feedback about this?
Yeah, good question. Feel free to reach out to me directly by email. So I'm sharing my email with Cecil, and it's mluo@stripe.com. If you have any questions or comments or feedback, we love feedback on some of our products of like what could be more developer friendly. Maybe the docs aren't as clear, right? Would love feedback via email.
Okay, awesome. Sounds great. And Jonathan, I know you work with a lot of different customers on building their integrations and things of that nature. I mean, are you seeing a lot of folks like using embedded checkout and using elements and things like that, like for their users? Is that like a thing that you're seeing happening a lot in our integration stories?
Yeah, there's definitely been a really strong adoption, even as it's been a preview, as Michael said. I think what really resonates with people is like the checkout sessions API is kind of well established. People are familiar with it. People know how it works. It interoperates with all of the Stripe's kind of primitives, like Jake touched on at the start. So yeah, it really resonates that people can use a pre-existing API. You can use pre-existing kind of components. There's nothing necessarily brand new here. It's just kind of bringing the two together, and you get the best of both worlds. So it's really resonated with a lot of users. It's kind of been fun seeing people putting their integrations together and kind of switching from hosted checkout and even switching from embedded checkout.
Nice.
Yeah, maybe just to add on to that, I think it's especially a no-brainer as you scale from hosted or embedded. Let's assume you're a startup today, and then a year down the road, you're processing hopefully hundreds of millions of dollars, but you're still on hosted and embedded. If you want to update the front end, have it make it look like your brand and feel, you can do that with changing very minimal backend code. And I think that is like a huge value prop for a lot of our startup users and customers that scale really quickly.
Yeah, and that actually makes me think about Jake's slide that he had in the beginning, where he showed, hosted, and then he showed embedded, and then he showed like elements. Like you said, like we can continue to use like similar APIs and still maintain control over our payments, and then you can continually, enhance or update your application with Stripe, and it'll just kind of keep working with you, right? Because we're still using some of those familiar patterns, using some of those familiar APIs. And now you're just able to control what your user experience is, whether it's a hosted experience, whether it's an embedded experience, whether you want fully custom with elements. Like you can kind of pick and choose what that looks like without having to like retool the entire backend to kind of suit that particular scenario.
Yeah, exactly. And Elements is used by like, Pepsi and Urban Outfitters and Nvidia, like the largest enterprises in the world. And so like the control, customization, and scale of Elements is now something that our users can take advantage of as they're scaling without having to change their backend.
Yep.
That's fantastic.
Yep. And maybe one more thing to add that I didn't get a chance to show, but with the checkout sessions, as Jake mentioned, it's super easy to add on other Stripe products, right? So as another example, if you're a startup and then you scale to hundreds of millions of dollars and you realize you need to start collecting sales tax, right? You can easily do that by just saying automatic tax enabled equals true, right? So literally one line of code change and you can start collecting sales tax and remitting that, right? If you want to have subscriptions, you can kind of just change this mode. Right now, it's payment, so that's like a one-time payment. You can change that to subscription mode, right? And it's super easy, one line of code change. Obviously, you should change, these prices too, based off of whatever your subscription is. But it's super easy to use a lot of the other Stripe products as you scale. It's one line of code change.
Nice. So I have to ask this question, and I don't know if you can answer it, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. So when this is done, right? Like, in the next couple of months, when this is out and this GA and folks are playing around with it, what are y'all gonna be doing next? Like, what are some of the other experiences? What are some of the other things that you're thinking about in terms of like, the user experience for developers as they're trying to build these types of applications?
Yeah. I think the one word answer is just adding more flexibility, right? Like, I think that's really the big theme. Like, how do we flexibly enable a developer to model whatever they need to model, like very bespoke experiences within kind of the checkout sessions, right? So for example, if you have a third-party gift card or reward system, right, that doesn't model well in Stripe's product catalog because we don't have gift cards or a reward system. How do we enable that developer to still bring in those rewards, those gift cards into the Stripe checkout session, right? So it's a lot of flexibility that is kind of the big thing that's next for us.
Gotcha. And then we have a comment just came in just now from Chris from YouTube. Thank you for your comment, Chris. Chris is saying, on the Stripe address element, can you please give the option to split the full name into first name and last name into 2 columns that are side by side?
Maybe I'll let Jake take that question.
Yes, thanks, Chris. This is definitely feedback we've heard. It is on our list of things to do. So stay tuned. Once we get this Elements with checkout sessions integration out the door, we will definitely turn our attention to some of these other fixes.
Awesome. Again, thank you so much for your question, Chris. If anyone else in the chat has any questions, definitely feel free to go ahead and drop them in, and we'll make sure we get those answered. Or, if you don't feel like bringing it up, we did share Michael's email. Feel free to send him an email, ask him for all the features that you want. You can send them over to Michael, and he'll figure that out for you. All right, let's see what else we got going on. There are no other questions. One thing I want to ask you folks. So I know we have our Discord channel. And a lot of the times we have a lot of conversations in our Discord channels. Folks are in there, asking questions and doing things of that nature. Are you two folks on Discord, and are you do you talk to developers and stuff like that in that space? Would that be another place that they could contact you if they wanted to reach out to you?
Go for it.
I
Jake.
personally am not on Discord, but we work super closely with our technical support team, and those things definitely find their way back to Michael and I, and we work really closely with those folks.
Yeah, I would say I do use Discord. I am not actively monitoring the Stripe Discord channel like maybe Jonathan is, but if you have some feedback, feel free to put in the Discord, and it will work its way to me or Jake.
Right. So I just want to bring that up as that is another option, right? So for folks that wanted to, just share their comments and feedbacks, feel free to go ahead and post them over there, and they will definitely get back to the team, and they'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah,
right,
my team staff the Discord server, so if you frequent there, then you're probably speaking to me or somebody else. And as both Jake and Michael said, we kind of triage any feedback requests that we get from users, and kind of definitely relay those to the Checkout and Elements teams.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and bring that address up. So if folks are interested, you can use that link down below. And definitely feel free to go ahead and, jump in and ask all your questions and things of that nature on the Discord channel. But with that being said, I think we're pretty much at the end of the show. Let me take your screen off really quick, Michael. So yeah, thank both of you so much for coming on. And Jonathan, Jonathan, you've been on here multiple times before. Good to see you again, my friend, and happy to have you back on. If folks are interested, again, in learning more about what they've seen today with checkouts, with elements, with anything of the sort, definitely go ahead and head over to the documentation. Again, feel free to email Michael or head over to our Discord channel, and you can learn a lot more about that stuff as well. Now, before we close, one quick thing I do want to bring up. On May 6th through 8th, right? So coming up in a couple of months, we're actually going to be hosting Stripe Sessions, which is our company conference that we have for, developers and founders and startups and enterprises and all those folks. We're all going to get together in Moscone in San Francisco and have a good old time talking about some of the new and exciting things that are happening in the world of Stripe. So if you just happen to be around in the area, definitely feel free to come by. We have tons of amazing guest speakers. I'm going to scroll down here a little bit so you can see some of the speakers and some of the breakouts we have. Obviously, we're going to have some of the founders and things of that nature. Oh, we're going to have Mark Zuckerberg is going to be one of our guest speakers as well. So again, if you're in the area or feel like flying into San Francisco, May 6th through 8th, we'll be having Stripe Sessions. Definitely feel free to come by. But other than that, I think that's about it, folks. So again, thank you all so much for coming on. That's going to be the end of this week's Stripe Developer Office Hours. We're going to have another one next week. Next week, we'll be talking about data pipeline, which I know is a topic a lot of folks are interested about. If you're wanting to get your Stripe data out and put it into a data warehouse or, whatever data store and query with it or train your models and agents and things of that nature with it, that is definitely a conversation. Definitely recommend that you all come and check out. So hopefully I'll see you all next week. And thank you again for joining us. Bye, everybody.